before you go on there, what do you think is the belief that holds most people back in the world?
Their belief in themselves. I mean,
Their lack of belief, or
the lack of belief in themselves. I mean, for you to truly believe in possibility, a new possibility, you better believe in yourself. And if you're going to believe in yourself, if you believe in yourself, you got to believe in a new possibility. You can't do one without the other. So again, going from the old self to the new self and changing that belief, you come up against that belief that says you can, it's too hard, you'll never change, nobody else has done this, whatever it is, right?
I've heard you say many times at your retreats, but also on here before, that your personal or your personality is your personal reality.
Right.
I think that's what you've said.
Yeah.
And so if I'm getting that right, your personality is your personal reality. And if your belief in self is limiting or limited and a lower frequency or doubting constantly, then that's going to become your personal reality, it sounds like.
Yeah, you'll have a lot of reasons to doubt in your life. And that's just it's a self-reflective universe.
Right.
But when they truly were, this is where we still see this currently today. It's not just doing it with your eyes closed. It's doing it with your eyes open, right? So then when they started saying, how am I going to be in my new life? And they started rehearsing in their mind, planning their behaviors, right?
Still got to live it.
Yeah. So, but them closing their eyes and saying, what would greatness look like today? What would love do today? How can I respond or act differently around this situation so that it's loving to me? What would be the greatest expression of myself? And they started to think about how they would behave. The act of rehearsing the behavior started to install circuits as well. They're priming their brain. They're putting the circuits in place to use. And if you keep doing it, it gets easier to behave that way. And then keep feeling the emotion, right, of their future, and stop feeling the other emotion, you're making different chemistry. Right. And if you're truly feeling the emotion and having the intention to behave that way, and having the intention to think that way, the stronger the emotion you feel, the more you remember to behave that way, the more you remember to think that way. And if you can memorize that emotion, the body's so objective that it believes it's living in a new environment. It doesn't know the difference between the real life experience that's creating the emotion the person's creating by thought alone. And in some level, they started to transition to this new person, and the side effect of their change, they were sleeping better through the night. They started having less anxiety. They started noticing that their pain levels went away. They started to notice that they could eat more different foods, So they started to see the experiment working, like, oh my God. And I talked to some people. I remember talking to some people, they were like, yeah, my diagnosis was 20 years ago. Yeah, my diagnosis was 6 years ago. They told me I had a year to live,
Wow.
And like, I'm so happy, and yeah, it just went away. And, so I was mystified by that, and that kind of started the journey. And the last thing they had in common, which I found so fascinating, was something that I experienced as well. When they closed their eyes and decided who they no longer wanted to be, and they decided who they did want to be, and they were crossing that river of change, when they were doing that inward work, they lost track of space and time. When they opened their eyes, they thought it would be 15 minutes later, and it was an hour and 15 minutes later, and they were like, I don't know what happened. And so then I started looking into research on what part of the brain really can make thought more real than anything else, and it's the frontal lobe. And I've read every researcher and every single research paper, every book on the frontal lobe, anybody that was a really great scientist. And frontal lobe is like a volume control. It's the creative center. It's when you have an idea, speculation, invention. When you're looking at possibility, it switches on, and it's the CEO, it's a symphony leader. And it's going to look out over the landscape of the entire brain and call up different circuits of knowledge and experience that you have and seamlessly piece them together.
Wow.
And when it does it and the nerve cells start firing in tandem, your brain creates a holographic image, a picture, and you're selecting a new possibility. And you're like, I can do that. That's possible. You're selecting a new possibility, right? That's the creative center. It's an unknown. And for the passionate person, that thought in their mind literally becomes the experience, and the end product of the experience is the emotion. So the person who's seeing that future and all of a sudden feels the empowerment, the success, the abundance, the gratitude from the healing, it's that thought and that feeling, It's that image and that emotion. It's that stimulus and that's response that's conditioning the body to emotionally be in the future. Now think about this. If you're feeling the feelings of your future as if it's already happened, if your body is feeling the emotion of your future like it's already happened, you won't be looking for it. You only look for it when you feel like it hasn't happened. When it's already happened, you're no longer looking for it, which means you're no longer separate. And that's when people started having really powerful changes. So I started studying the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe is like a volume control. And when it switches on and you assign meaning to an act, if I said, Lewis, if you did this, like whatever it is, if you did this and I can tell you all the reasons, all the benefits, and I can give you the what and the why. And you go, I got it. And I showed you how. The moment you got the how, if you understood the what and the why, you would assign meaning to the task, and the frontal lobe switches on, and it wants the intentional outcome. It doesn't want a half an outcome, it wants the outcome, and it's going to keep doing it until it shortens the distance between the thought and the experience, right? So somehow, this frontal lobe would switch on and lower the volume, the circuits in the brain that cause you to process your body, to feel your body, to be aware of anything in your environment and what your environment made of, objects and people and bodies and things and places, and not be thinking about the future or the past. You're so locked in the present moment that space and time somehow change. And their inner world becomes more real than their outer world. And it was fascinating because when they came back on some level, they felt differently. So anyway, so I wrote a book about it called Evolve Your Brain, The Science of Changing Your Mind, in a very heady, very academic. And I think when you write your first book, you write to your biggest critics, right? And then there were some documentaries that came out, and people were starting to ask really important questions. Like the theory and the philosophy was really good, but people started saying to me, okay, if your thoughts have something to do with your future or your life, how do you do it? Like, how do you do it? And then the second question was, if my personality creates my personal reality and I got to change my personality to change my personal reality, why is it so hard to change? I mean, if most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, it doesn't work. So now how do I change so my life changes? And I thought, what a great question. And I saw that it wasn't as easy to change as we think, right? You could say on Monday morning, you're going to stop cursing and stop complaining.
Good luck.
And then by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're unconscious. You can default it back to the old self, right? And that's that. How many times do I have to forget and go unconscious till I stop forgetting and start remembering? I mean, if you want to be happy, really happy in your life, you got to stop complaining, because complaining doesn't make you feel happy. If you want to be happy, you can't judge another person, because the judgment is not going to make you feel happy. So you got to, that anything that's not loving you must die. You know, I mean, or a part of us must die that's not love, right?
Right.
And
or
I think
must transform in some way.
In some way. But there is some death that goes on.
A letting go, a death, a surrender.
And an addiction, you know, you break the addiction, right? So, anyway, so these documentaries came out. We're doing seminars around the world, and I was on panels, and I was listening to these questions. And this was, you know, early 2000s, and I realized that there weren't a lot of people teaching how to do it, right? So I thought, okay, I'm going to start running these.
People were talking about it theoretically.
Right. It was all, you know, that's how it was at that time. And I thought, well, I'm just going to start teaching these events. I'll take everything that I've learned from the spontaneous remissions, everything that I've researched on neuroplasticity. I went back to school, studied neuroscience. I did brain imaging classes. I got really into it. And I thought, God, I'll teach these classes, you know, on a Friday night and all-day Saturday workshop. I'll teach about brain waves. I'll teach about placebo. I'll teach about, you know, emotions and survival and stress, and, you know, give the people information. And then I'll give them something to do. And I think people came for the first couple of years, and they felt better at the end of a one-day workshop. But I didn't see any really big changes. Right. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm done. You know, maybe it doesn't work. But everybody kept saying, can you teach another one? So then I would do another one, and then another one, and then I kept level 2, level 3, level 4, you know, I just kept going, and then I got to a point where I didn't know anything else. And then I had a mystical experience one morning right before the first day of this event that changed me, completely changed me.
What year is this? roughly?
In 2011 or 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, there's way more to reality than I thought. Like, there's way more. And so somewhere in the mix around this time, I started seeing people stepping out of wheelchairs with MS. Not once, not twice. I saw people with Parkinson's disease, with a lot of facial paralysis and tremors. In a weekend workshop, like, say, I don't have any tremors. I'm out of my wheelchair, and they're dancing around, and I think I was more surprised than anybody. Like, I was really super surprised what was taking place. I was witnessing something happening right before my eyes, and I kept saying, something's got to be, there must be an inner event that's going on there, that inside that person, that is so real, so transcendental, that it's changing their biology, and they're upregulating genes for health, and they're downregulating genes for disease, and something's going on in their brain, something's going on in their body. And so that's when I changed everything. That's when I said, okay, we're going to stop doing these weekend events, and we're going to do a 4-day event, one evening and 4 full days, and we're going to do scientific measurements. We're going to measure brains before the event and brains after the event. And I wanted to see that the changes weren't just in their mind. I wanted to know that they were in their brains. So I brought a team of neuroscientists together. We did a lot of quantitative EEGs. And then I did something really interesting, and we started measuring brains in real time. So I could see their brains while the meditation was going on. And then if it requires a clear intention, that's a function of a coherent brain, and an elevated emotion, which is a function of the heart, okay? Let's see if we can change the brain and heart in really specific ways. So in the beginning, we partnered with Heart Math Institute, and we did a lot of analysis on HRV, and we wanted people to be able to sustain heart coherence, not just for 5 minutes, but for 45 minutes. I wanted it to become a skill.